Welcome and thank you for coming today, and our love to those who will watch the service later. Kim and Ken are recording it for family members who can't physically be here. I'm Tara Glowacki, Alan and Millie's oldest grandchild, and I'll be guiding our service today. We're here to remember Millie Otter, our mom, grandma, and friend. Today we come together to celebrate her life, to grieve her death, and to say goodbye. Let's open the service with a prayer. Creator God, thank you for Millie, for the love she showed us and the resilience she passed down to us. We commit her spirit to your loving care and ask for your help as we learn to live with this loss. Holy Spirit, Comforter, help us to feel your presence as we grieve together, laugh together, and say our goodbyes. Amen. Another of Millie's grandkids, Erin, is going to lead us in a hymn, Be Thou My Vision. You can find the words to the hymn inside your program.
If you are willing and able, let's stand together and sing this hymn together. Be thou my vision, O Lord of my heart. Not be all else to me, save that thou art. Thou my best Lord, by day or by night. Waking or sleeping, thy presence my life. Be thou my wisdom, and thou my true word. I ever with thee, and thou with me, Lord. Thou my great Father, and I thy true Son. Thou in me dwelling, and I with thee one. Riches I heed not, nor man's empty praise. Thou mine inheritance, now and always. Thou and thou only, the first in my heart. My King of heaven, my treasure, thou art. O high King of heaven, my victory won. Oh, may I reach heaven's joys, oh bright heaven's sun. Heart of my own heart, whatever befall, still be my vision, oh ruler of
child, Laura, is going to come read Psalm 121 for us.
Psalm 121. I lift my eyes up to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore.
Two of Millie's children, Jackie and Ken, have prepared eulogies that they'll come share with us now.
Moral support. Hi, my name's Jackie. I'm the oldest daughter in the family, and it's both a privilege and a joy just to reflect on how important and loved my mom was, and also to acknowledge the pain and loss of her passing. Mom passed away on February 9th after a long battle with Parkinson's. It was so hard to say goodbye to her, but we know now she's at peace and her struggles are over. And we know she's also with the love of her life, our dad, who passed away on October 28th. We miss her and we miss our dad so much. Mom left a legacy of her love and her perseverance. She touched many lives, and I'm so grateful to have had her for my mom. Family was everything to Mom. Her life growing up had been difficult. Both her parents passed away when she was very young. Her dad when she was an infant, and her mom when she was about 3. She and her sisters went to live with an uncle, and after a couple of years, he was killed in a bombing raid while he was coming home to give her lunch. From there, she went into foster care, separated from her oldest sister, and then a few years later in her second foster home from her middle sister. And this experience developed in Mom a perseverance through adversity, which followed her throughout her whole life. And we clearly saw this perseverance played out as she battled cancers, as she had a host of other health issues in her later years, and finally, as she battled Parkinson's. And her experience growing up also created in her a focus on the importance of family, especially because she had been separated from her sisters. And as her children, we were the beneficiaries of these 2 special traits in our mom. And I believe that this legacy is passed down to her grandchildren. Growing up, loving and caring for our family was Mom's focus, and she taught us so many lessons about love. I always knew my mom loved me. She told us in many ways, not only with words, but also with actions. Once, when I was about 3 or 4, my friend Andrew, who was also the same age, and I took my doll carriage and went to Dairy Queen. This was in Northern Ontario, and the Dairy Queen was a way away, and it involved crossing the Trans-Canada Highway. I was quite young, so I'm not quite sure how far it was, but it was definitely farther than the end of the block, which was how far we were allowed to go. The people at Dairy Queen called our parents to come get us, and they fed us an ice cream, which was delicious. And Mrs. Miller came to pick us up, and all I can remember is she was very, very mad. And it was at this time that it occurred to me that we probably shouldn't have done this, and I was expecting the same reaction when I got home. But my mom was so happy to see me. She was just smothering us with loves and hugs. Way better reaction than Mrs. Miller. Mom always made our home a safe place to be. I knew I was loved, and even when we grew up and moved away, she always welcomed us home with open arms and was so delighted to see us. As kids, Mom was always there to chat to when we came home from school, usually with cookies waiting. And as we grew, when we came in late at night, she insisted that we woke her up and let her know we were home safe. This often involved then sitting on the end of her bed, telling her about our evening, often for a long time. And she never seemed to mind being woken up for a midnight chat. Or if she would have preferred to sleep, she never let on to me. Although apparently she did tell Doug, because he told me when I was writing the eulogy that I talked a lot in the middle of the night. Mom also had a funny side, and some of her sayings lasted long beyond their original utterance. She used to tell us stories of growing up, and she was a lot naughtier than you would expect. One time she got caught running in the hallway of the school, and when the prefect asked her name, she replied, Fanny Freezebottom. That name stuck around in our childhood and was brought out teasingly occasionally when she did something wrong, or sometimes when none of us wanted to confess to something. Another popular saying came from our camping trip to Europe when I was 16. Mom wanted to get all our passports stamped as we were entering France, and decided to practice her less than perfect French. Hence the phrase, "Stampez le passeport," became a staple in our household. And there were always her silent gestures. When you wanted to take a photo of her, and there was when she knew she was right or thought she had made a point. Mom was also great at welcoming our friends into our home and making them feel welcome. Cookies would always appear, and she was accepting of people and loved having people around and hearing their stories. She mothered everyone. When Doug and I started going out, she welcomed him with open arms, accepting him into our family, showering him with food, since he was a poor student, and lots of her love. And then came grandkids. There was so much love. Grandkids were the best thing on earth. My oldest, Tara, was born 4 weeks early, and so the planned trip to see her first grandchild at Christmas, which would have been right after my due date, was now far too long to wait. So Mom hopped a plane and arrived in Waterloo for when I came home from hospital. And then she came again at Christmas. As I said, she loved being a grandma, and you could never get too much of grandchildren. Apparently grandchildren are better than children. And more perfect grandchildren came, and they all knew her love. She would take them out for treats. She filled her home with kids' toys and games for when they came to visit, and would search endless treasures at yard sales. Kim once told her she liked old Archie comics and dress-up clothes, and she scoured yard sales for all of those things for Kim, just because that's what Kim wanted. She also taught us so many other things about family. She was devoted to my dad, and although they would argue and niggle at each other, all of us know the phrase, "Oh, Alan." But I was always sure of their love for each other. And even as a child, when I asked Mom which of her kids she loved best, her answer was always that she loved Dad the best. She'd known him the longest. They started dating at 16 and were together for nearly 73 years. And when my dad passed away, she had a hard time of it. And it's just such a comfort to know that they're together again now. Shortly after my mom passed, like a couple of days, Linda and I were sitting in Linda's living room when her newly installed bathroom window suddenly smashed. and in the middle was a hole in the perfect shape of an angel. And an image came to mind that was Mom trying out her new angel wings and losing control. And we could hear the words, "Oh, Alan," because of course it was Dad who was teaching her to fly. I love you, Mom, and I'm always going to miss you. And I look forward to when we meet again. In the meantime, keep flying.
It's very hard to sit down and write out a eulogy for your mother. I put it off for weeks, knowing how emotional it would be, remembering my mom's legacy, and reminding myself that I wouldn't be able to just simply pick up the phone and talk to her anymore. Jackie's already talked about Mom's childhood and how her early experiences made her committed to ensuring that we all had a security of a loving and supportive family. This is something that we will always be grateful for, as I can't imagine any of us would have gotten through all the turmoils that we have faced over the years without Mom and Dad. They were our support system, and they taught us so well that we've now been able to support each other through this transition. But one thing that Mom didn't like, though, were memorials that were where everyone focused on sad stories of loss, and that was largely because she didn't like to cry and didn't like people to see her cry. So her life philosophy was not to dwell on the pain of past events and let them define her attitude for the future. And I can clearly hear her voice in my head saying that she would want no tears and for us to share the fond memories she had of her and Dad. Now, whether these were stories that she would want us to share with people is something that the voice in my head was a little vague on, so here we go. We always knew Mom and Dad were soulmates, as Jackie said. If you ever asked Mom who she loved the best, she would immediately answer, "Your father." Dad was similarly devoted to Mom, and her well-being was always the first thing on their mind. Despite this, though, our childhood was punctuated by stories of the two of them niggling at one another. And one of the very early family stories occurred at their wedding, where following the formal communion, Dad stood up and Mom realized her wedding dress wouldn't allow her to follow. Embarrassed that everyone was looking at her, she turned to Dad and said, "Help me up, you fool." To which Dad tartly replied, "Don't call me a fool." This was just the start of the endless entertainment the two of them gave us with their banter. One evening, they were goofing around in our kitchen, and Dad was threatening to throw a wet dishcloth at Mom. She warned him that if he did, she would scream. And Dad, at this point, I'm a little fuzzy, Dad either just threw the dishcloth at her or said something like, "You wouldn't dare." At which point, Mom just stood in the middle of our kitchen and let out the most horrific screech just to prove her point. This resulted in one of our neighbors from across the lane running across, banging on our door, and this followed with a very awkward conversation trying to explain that Dad wasn't in fact physically abusing our mother. These isolated instances punctuated our childhood, but the day-to-day stuff was just as amusing. As all of you have probably experienced, Mom was chatty, whereas Dad, not so much. And I can remember the number of times that we would be watching TV with Mom turned sideways to Dad's chair, carrying on a monologue about something, while Dad was doing a crossword puzzle, scanning the program over the top of his glasses like this, and every once in a while saying, "Yes, yes, yes, I'm trying to watch television." Usually this would result in Mom using one of her favorite phrases, like calling him a miserable dog, and then she would turn to you and said that she thought Dad was either going deaf or senile, as he never seemed to know what was going on. Another memory of Mom was her fondness for our pets. Alongside her adamant insistence that they were required for the kids, but she was always burdened with looking after them. This started with our first cat, Simon, who was a Siamese who was in fact pretty mischievous, if not outright malicious. Mom was endlessly patient defending this cat who loved to attack your ankles, bring live birds into the house and then let them go so they could fly around, smack into walls and things like that, and who spent most of his time beating up every other cat in the neighborhood. However, her real love was a cat named Fido. Fido was nominally my cat growing up, but Mom always had a sweet spot for her. Fido was constantly given treats by Mom. I think this was her preparing for grandmotherhood. And this resulted in Fido having a rather Garfield-like physique. When Barbara and I were married and looking for our own place, Mom was adamant that we would not be allowed to have cats, and it was okay if we left Fido with her to take care of. We would come home to find Mom carrying Fido around the garden to show her the flowers. And decades after Fido passed away, there were photos of her on Mom's fridge, alongside all the photos of the grandchildren. No photos of her own kids. A picture of Fido. The final memory I have of Mom was her constant pursuit of a good deal. This probably stemmed from her training in financial auditing, but Mom always knew the price of everything. Would spend ages each week going through flyers, looking for what was on sale and where it was. She would drive far out of her way to save 50 cents on something, even though it might cost her more to do that in gas than she actually saved. It was all about getting the best deal. She also had a goal of never paying full price for anything and loved to haggle. And this was really handy for us as I was a kid, because it would save you whenever you were trying to buy something big. So as a teenager, I remember taking Mom along anytime I was buying a guitar. I would select a guitar, some salesperson would tell me what the sticker price of the guitar was, and Mom would say, "You go over there and play with it for a little while I talk to this person." Within about 10 or 15 minutes, you would see this very defeated looking salesperson, and she would tell you the guitar was now 50% of what they'd originally asked for. I don't ever recall paying full price for something until I left home. And I'm awful at negotiating, but luckily for our home finances, Barbara is actually pretty good at it. Not only did Mom need to get a good deal, she needed everyone to know she had gotten a good deal. And all of us remember the story of Mom's last car purchase, where she offered the salesperson a fraction of what they were asking, and by Mom's recollection, beat them down until this salesperson was a husk of their former self, got the car for far below what would ever be reasonable for anybody to ever expect. Whether or not this was true was beside the point. Mom felt like she had gotten a good deal, and that was all that mattered. And these are the things that I'll try and remember of my mom, and not let the pain of her loss define my attitude for the future.
My grandma did not have an easy start in life, and she had to learn early on how to survive hard times. Grandma survived much of what she went through by maintaining a sense of humor about it, and her humor had a dark side that always amused me. She could be funny around difficult things like aging, cancer, and death. I remember she once told my siblings and I that we needed to practice our running for when she and Grandma were old and in wheelchairs in the nursing home. She said we were going to have to race them down the hallways, and whoever was pushing her had better win. That kind of humor can do wonders for getting us through, and I'm certain it did a lot to help Grandma through the many trials she faced. Despite her early losses, Grandma managed to build a great family and a great life for herself. She enjoyed traveling, going out to dinner, and eating weird British foods like Marmite. And she loved her kids and grandkids, and did her best to show us that love in big and small ways. As grandkids, we could count on Grandma considering all the details that would make our visits fun. She loved to serve our favorite foods, making sure she was well stocked with chicken fingers and breakfast cereals when we came to visit. And she would comb through garage sales looking for toys. And she gathered an impressive collection of Archie comics for Kim and I. Although I don't think Grandma always understood the things I was passionate about, I was always able to count on her support and acceptance. When I came out, she told me stories about every gay person she had ever known. And when she found out that my spouse was a Muslim, I got to hear about every good Muslim person she had ever encountered. That kind of storytelling is not usually considered the most woke response, but I knew that she was trying to communicate acceptance. and to connect on something that was important in my life, and I deeply appreciated that. And it always saved me from ever having to work too hard to keep a conversation going. The early traumas that my grandma went through, the losses, the war, the instability, definitely left their scars. That kind of trauma takes more than a lifetime to heal. And I think it's okay to be honest about the fact that sometimes managing grandma took a lot of energy for those who were close to her. Overall though, grandma did well with the life she was given. She took a rough start in the world and still managed to build a life full of love and laughter. And I hope that we all inherit some of that resilience. Grandma did prefer celebrations of life to sad funerals, and today we can emphasize celebrating her life. But we're also saying goodbye, and there's a lot of sadness in that. Grief involves cycling through many emotions. Sometimes a funny memory will surface, sometimes sadness, or anger, or gratitude, or regret. All of these are valid, and we can feel them and accept them as part of our loss, part of the way we honor grandma by acknowledging how deeply she impacted our lives. My grandparents were not exceptionally religious people, but I still believe God was at work in grandma's life, bringing love and joy even through hard times. And I believe that God's power to bring life continues even after death, and that as we who are left walk through our grief, we can trust God to be with us and to bring us regularly back to the joy and love that grandma so often showed. Let's close with prayer. God, thank you for our grandma, mom, friend, Millie. Thank you for her life, for the things that she gave us and the time that we had with her. Thank you for the reception food that we're about to share, for the people who prepared it for us. I pray that you would bless them and the time that we're about to share together. Help us to know and feel your presence and love as we grieve this loss. And I pray that you would bring us love and joy even through this time. Amen. Thank you everyone for coming. Reminder to the family, the interment of the ashes is at 2 p.m. If you don't know where we're going, just ask someone and we'll figure it out. And everyone is welcome now to come over to the reception hall next door over and join us for a light lunch. So again, thank you everyone for coming, and may the God of hope bless you and keep you, and may the peace of God, which passes all understanding, guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. I'll see you in the reception hall.